Please just start with your general reaction to the settlement and what you think it indicates.
Yeah, so I think the first thing that needs to be mentioned is that this is a bipartisan settlement. And we see so frequently in Washington how politics gets in the way of leaders taking bold actions to protect Americans and to do what is right for their constituents and the people. And so a huge thank you from the people of West Virginia. We worked a lot on this case, but the AGs, the Republican AGs in Tennessee and Kentucky, along with the Democrat AGs in California and Colorado, really led the way on this. And so it really is kind of a remarkable little window into how bipartisan politics can work. And I think your intro in terms of how the settlement broke down is incredible. I mean, this is a $17 billion global settlement that will be paid out over about 10 years, as you said.
Yes.
But I think most importantly, and West Virginia is going to utilize the roughly $115 million share that we will receive from that to very, very good use to make sure that our children and parents have everything that they need in what is a very trying time to be a parent. I am one. But the injunctive relief is really what is so remarkable here. And what you're seeing is that these tech companies are recognizing that their products can and are dangerous to children, and that they need to be doing more to be cognizant of that, to admit that, and that they have the tools to make it better. And we're really, really excited about what the future looks like for children in this country who use social media platforms, which is basically all of them, and what this lawsuit's going to do to make their lives a little bit easier.
Attorney General McCuskey, if we can just continue with the financial settlement for a moment, there is a discrepancy. The court filing says you agreed to a near $17 billion settlement. Meta is saying up to $18 billion. My understanding is that there may have been a separate or ad hoc settlement with another state, Texas. Could you shed any light on that?
So I don't actually know much about the Texas settlement. The numbers there add up. I know the AG in Texas very well. He's a really great guy. And I'm sure that he did the best he could for the people in Texas. I'm sure their settlement is incredible. And if the numbers are 17.1 and 18.1, it would make enormous amounts of sense for that $1 billion going to Texas to have been added to the number in the press release.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Did you achieve what you wanted to through settling that you would otherwise have targeted through the court system?
Yes, and I think that you can't really separate those two things. So we did achieve this through the court system. And so what we achieved occurred because we were able to put sufficient pressure on Meta during the trial process, right? So it's important to remember that this happens sort of shortly after they presented their case. And so, what they understood was that they were in a really bad position if this case went to a jury. And so just because a judge didn't make this decision or a jury didn't make this decision doesn't mean it isn't a result of the incredible work of the staffs of those four attorneys general, and interestingly enough, all the staffs of all the signatory states, right? So my team works every single day with the teams in California and Tennessee and Kentucky and California, and Rhode Island and Louisiana, you name it, right? So that our staffs are all very, very close and work together on a lot of these issues. So this is a result of the court process and would not have happened but for the fact that we were winning this lawsuit and Meta knew it.
We're live on Bloomberg Television and on Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Tech speaking to West Virginia Attorney General J.B. McCuskey. A part of the $16.7 billion settlement, $5 billion approximately, is held back by Meta, contingent on TikTok and YouTube adopting the same framework that they have agreed to. And we can get into the specifics of the framework. At this early stage, have you any indication of TikTok and YouTube's conditions and attitude towards following that framework?
So I haven't had any direct conversations with either of those two companies. I would imagine that there is a litany of litigation coming against them in the coming months and years to make sure that part of this settlement is accomplished, right? And I think it's really a novel approach. And to the folks that came up with this idea on how to sort of link these two things, what's important about that is that kids use all three of these platforms. And we believe that the injunctive relief, the things that you talked about, the nighttime caps and
yes,
the hourly breaks and the 15-minute break every hour, These are really important things. And so what we want to make sure is that these other groups, these smaller companies, are implementing those same two things. So it actually gives us incentive to make sure that our children are being protected in the same ways on those platforms as they are on Meta. And it gives Meta the incentive to make sure that their competitors are also following the same guidelines that we placed in their lap with this settlement. And so it really is sort of a master class in how to settle a lawsuit and how to make sure that both sides have skin in the game.
My understanding is that TikTok as a case study faces, I think, around 15 different AG cases that are not consolidated. And YouTube and Snap, for what it's worth, I think face a smaller number than that.
Even just yesterday, Snap was sued by the great Attorney General in Pennsylvania, Dave Sunday. So, like I said before, I believe these cases are coming.
So how does that fit in, and how aggressive will this coalition of states be in saying, we've done this with Meta, we want you to follow suit in this framework that Meta's agreed to adopt?
Yeah, I would say very aggressive. I think what we see here is the success that we've had in this Meta case is a blueprint for how to be successful with other similarly situated tech companies, because the harm happening to children is the same, and it's for the exact same reasons. And so it has always been our goal to make sure that every platform protects children in the same way that Meta is going to be protecting children based upon their willingness to change their platform based on the pressure that we placed on them in this litigation.
I want to go into some of the specifics here. So the mainstay of it are limits on the use of the two platforms, Instagram and Facebook, by 13 to 17-year-olds. And in one example, there is a 2-hour daily limit where a teen can't simply exceed that. It would require parental permission, essentially, for a teen within that age bracket to use the platforms for more than 2 hours. How sort of contingent is the success of this initiative on the parents buying in to what Meta's agreed to do?
Yeah, I think very contingent. And I think in this country, one of the things that is paramount is that parents do and always will have the best interests of their children at heart, and that the government should be doing everything in its power to give parents the tools to be able to raise their children in the way that they want. And what we see with social media platforms is that there is a divide between the understanding of them between the children and their parents. I have an 11-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old daughter, both of whom use Facebook, they use Roblox, they use YouTube. And to be fair, they know way more about how to use it and what they can do on it than I do. And so it is really incumbent in this way that the government sort of bridge that gap and ensure that parents who may not be able to understand or use the technology properly are protected. Their children are protected at the exact same time. And so, what we see here is a way for parents to be able to do what it was that they wanted to do in the first place, and were in many instances unable to.
Attorney General, we have heard from Meta's chief legal counsel or legal officer this morning, CJ Mahoney. I just wanted to play a little bit of what was said.
This framework will only work if all our peers join us. Because teens move fluidly across dozens of apps, we need an industry-wide solution. We therefore call on our industry peers, TikTok and YouTube, to implement this new framework right away.
I think we need to keep talking about this part of the story. Meta is saying we want to see our peers participate in this, and they withhold some of the penalty they've agreed to pay until that's the case. Again, please, Attorney General, sign sort of the likelihood that you see in that happening.
I actually can't see the screen, but through my earpiece, that certainly sounded like an AI video. But I think it's very likely. Our office and my team of lawyers who worked on this case and I are very bullish about the other social media companies adopting this, because here's the thing. All of these things cost money, and kids always need money from their parents. And so they will, in my opinion, they will be a market aberration if they aren't providing these kind of protections to teens. And so I think in many respects it is they should want to implement all of these safety precautions, not only because they're great for kids who are their customers, but because they aren't going to want to be seen as the social media platform that is the only social media platform left that is still harming teens in the way that this lawsuit outlined. Because the theories are identical.
We're live on Bloomberg Television and on Bloomberg Radio speaking to West Virginia Attorney General J.B. McCuskey. There is an independent auditor that will monitor compliance. Will that mechanism have teeth?
Yes, that mechanism will have teeth because it will be in constant communication with the attorney generals who reached this settlement. And all of us are stalwart in the fact that these changes need to be implemented. And we are going to hold Meta's feet to the fire here because they've made some really incredible promises, some things that we think will make a difference in children and parents' lives all across this country. And if Meta is trying to circumvent what they're promised or trying to do things that get around what the settlement says, we need to continue to be the protectors for our clients who are our children and parents. So I feel very good about that part of this settlement. I think that Meta has really met us halfway here, pun intended, I guess. And their willingness to settle this case and their willingness to go as far as they have for these child protections, I think shows a willingness on their part to do all of the things that they promised. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to assume that they're going to do every single thing that they said they're going to do. But these auditors will have the power, and we will have the power to hold them accountable if they don't.
Meta, positions this framework as empowering the parents, and we've talked about, how contingent the success of this initiative will be on the parents. But for those aged 13 to 17, this is also a technology story about their access to a technology and their relationship with a technology. How do you see that changing your constituents that are within the age bracket 13 to 17?
It's interesting. One of the corollaries that I draw frequently is that, all of the people in my parents' generation watched their parents smoke cigarettes. And kids who watched their parents smoke were way less likely to smoke going forward. And I think frequently when 13-year-old kids see their mom and dad scrolling on their phone on the couch, they kind of see that as in the same way that kids who watch their parents smoke. And I think there's going to be an inherent shift in the next generation of kids where, they understand that the time suck that doom scrolling can create and the damage it causes to your relationship and to your friends. And I'm very hopeful that not just these safety precautions that we have put together here, but just the general shifts in society, we will have a generation of kids moving forward who hopefully want to get back outside, ride their bike, play baseball, hang out with their friends, play Spotlight, do all the things that we did when we were kids. And we're really hopeful that that's going to happen. And I think in many respects, we're starting to see that now.
Attorney General, this ends or closes the book on a specific piece of litigation. Just in the 60 seconds we have left, what happens next? How much does this continue at an industry-wide level?
I think it continues at an industry-wide level until all of those in the industry make the same commitment that Meta did to the children and parents of this country. And I believe that the attorney generals who filed this case are all ready to go to make sure that happens. And I'm very, very excited for the future for our kids. And I think this is a huge first step in holding all social media platforms accountable for how they have treated our kids and families as their customers.